Hello everybody, Alex here. Let's see, I'm going to show you a slideshow. These are pictures that I just took today. I went over to my stepdad's house to see him and my mother, and I took these pictures. He went out into the garden. He's 88, almost 89 years old. He may be 89 now. So he retired in the mid 90s. He worked at NASA at Johnson Space Center. He worked there when it was first built. He worked at the Manned Space Center. And he came here from Virginia when it was a branch of the government out near Washington, D.C., and he was in Virginia. And before that, he worked in the Navy. So his entire adult life, this man has worked for the federal government. He's a very good man. He's a very diligent, honest, hardworking guy. And me, as a flat earther and a person who doesn't think that we went to the moon or that even the earth is a ball, I feel really heavy-hearted and sad because he really, really, I mean, this is one wall of his den where it's basically a shrine to the whole space program. I mean, he was there, right there, this picture of, is that Buzz standing up? Look at all those signatures around that frame. Everybody he worked with signed that. He's got pins from every space program. He won awards and was sent to launches at Cape Canaveral. He's built models of the space shuttle and got them around his house. Pictures of the space shuttle taking off. He's got the Earthrise photo. He told me. That's him with his head right there. That's an oven that they used to test the heat shields for the space shuttle in and different materials. He ran equipment in his building that tested the heat durability of certain materials that they were making for rockets and vehicles that went into space so that they would not burn up. And this man worked over 34, 35 years here in Houston at the Johnson Space Center, even before it was named after ex-President Johnson. And if I ever bring up that the Earth is flat or that I don't think that we went to the moon, he gets so furious. And he just said, the main thing he says every time when the topic comes up, I worked with good people. Absolutely impossible. They could not have done that. I worked with good people. Now, a lot of us know that do a lot of research, and we know how segmentation works within government programs, the Defense Department. You know, if you're in a building and you work in this oven putting pieces in there, and you get your batch of materials and new products that come from another department, we're going to test these for this temperature range at these pressure conditions. Okay, let's do it. And you do your job and you're proud. You win an award, they send you to Cape Canaveral, you watch the shuttle take off. You're proud. Do you know he was actually on the team during the Apollo program that recorded the communications from the astronauts that first step on the moon, Buzz and Neil, and he was archiving and recording the tape reels and the telemetry tapes, the ones that are lost now. I told him one day, I said, hey, I said, Bud, you ought to go down there to NASA. I've heard they lost not only all the telemetry from the Apollo missions, but the communication. Didn't you tell me that you helped record the communications and archive the tape? They can't find them. Go tell them where you put them. And he shakes his head. He doesn't know how to take me. And I really don't know how to tell him. Here I am. I live in Clear Lake. I live in the town named Space City. I live right here next to, within less than a mile of Mission Control. You know, what am I going to say? I've run out of ideas for trying to wake them up, or even trying to have him sit down and listen to me, or watch anything on YouTube, or listen to anybody's explanation. But the reason why I'm making this video is I want everybody to know. I want all of my friends to know. I want my subscribers and people who think like I do, just to realize these are real lives involved. These are people who dedicated their entire life, all of their dreams, all of their inspirations, their perspiration, everything they believed in to the success of that program, and are very proud of it and are proud of the people that they worked with. So to tell them that it's a deception and that we never went, and that that Earthrise photo is maybe one of the most infamous CGI composites available from NASA.gov's website, and being infamously slaughtered online, it's quite a heavy thing to say, and I have not been able to get through to him, and I'm going to quit trying. I live right here in the center of the deception. I say in my videos, this is Alex reporting from the center of the deception. I really mean it. This is my family, people I know, my neighbors. I can jog around the Space Center complex. Let me read a little bit about the formation of Johnson Space Center. My stepdad, he said when he came down here, he came down from Virginia. It was between 1961 1963, I think it was 62. He came down, he literally was setting post holes in mud and making wood frames for sheds that were storing equipment that was moving down for Virginia from near Langley when they moved everything down here. And he went to work just so happy that he was involved in this project with the federal government and they were going to put a man on the moon. So then now when I read about it in Wikipedia, it's sad because I'm thinking of the personal life of this man I know who gets so offended, so mad at me. This is from Wikipedia, just the general page. It says the Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's manned spacecraft center where human spaceflight training, research, and flight control are conducted. It was built and leased to NASA by Joseph L. Smith and Associates, Inc. It was renamed in honor of the late U.S. President and Texas native Lyndon B. Johnson by an act of the United States Senate in February 1973. It consists of a complex of 100 buildings constructed on 1,620 acres in the Clear Lake area of Houston, which acquired the official nickname Space City in 1967. The center is home to NASA's Astronaut Corps. It's responsible for training astronauts from both the U.S. and its international partners. It has become popularly known for its flight control function, identified as Mission Control during the Gemini, Apollo, Skylab, Apollo-Soyuz, and Space Shuttle program flights. The Manned Spacecraft Center grew out of the Space Task Group, headed by Robert Gilruth, formed soon after the creation of NASA to coordinate the U.S. manned spaceflight program. The STG was based at the Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia, but reported organizationally to the Goddard Space Flight Center just outside Washington, D.C. To meet the growing needs of the U.S. human spaceflight program, plans began in 1961 to expand its staff to its own organization and move on to a new facility. This was constructed in 1962 and 1963 on land donated by the Humble Oil Company through Rice University and officially opened its doors in September of 1963. Today, Johnson Space Center is one of 10 major NASA field centers. Johnson Space Center has its origins in NASA's Space Task Group, created in November 5, 1958, with Langley Research Center, that's where my stepfather started, engineers under the direction of Robert Gilruth to direct Space Project Mercury and follow on manned space programs. The STG originally reported to the Goddard Space Flight Center organization with a total staff of 45, including 8 secretaries and computers, women who ran calculations on mechanical adding machines, and 37 engineers. This was expanded in 1959 by the addition of 32 Canadian engineers put out of work by the cancellation of the Avro Canada CF-105 Aero project. By the time he left office in January 1961, the first NASA administrator, T. Keith Glennon, realized that as the STG grew with the scope of America's space program, it would outgrow the Langley and Goddard centers and require its own location. 19 days earlier, he had written a memo to his yet unnamed successor, who turned out to be James E. Webb, recommending a new site to be chosen. By the time President John F. Kennedy set the goal in 1961 to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, It became clear Gilruth would need a larger organization to lead the Apollo program with new test facilities and research laboratories suitable to mount an expedition to the moon. In '61, Congress held hearings and passed a $1.7 billion 1962 NASA appropriations bill, which included $60 million for the new manned spaceflight laboratory. A set of requirements for the new site was drawn up and released to the Congress and general public. These included access to water transport by large barges, a moderate climate availability of all-weather commercial jet service, a well-established industrial complex with supporting technical facilities and labor, close proximity to a culturally active community in the vicinity of an institution of higher education, a strong electric utility and water supply at least 1,000 acres of land, and certain specified cost parameters. In August 1961, Webb asked Associate Director of the Ames Research Center, John F. Parsons, to head a site selection team which included Philip Miller, Wesley Shornovic, and Edward Campagna, the construction engineer for the SDG. The team initially came up with a list of 22 cities based on the climate and water criteria, then cut this list short to a list of 9 with nearby federal facilities. Cities considered were Jacksonville, Florida, Tampa, Florida, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana, Houston, Texas at the San Jacinto Army Ordnance Depot, Victoria, Texas at the FAA Airport, Corpus Christi, Texas for the Naval Air Station, San Diego, California for Camp Elliott, and San Francisco, California for Benicia Arsenal. Another 14 sites were then added, including 2 additional Houston sites chosen because of proximity to the University of Houston and Rice University. The team visited all 23 sites between August 21st and September 7th, 1961. During these visits, Massachusetts Governor John A. Volpe and Senator Margaret Chase Smith headed the delegations, which exerted peculiarly strong political pressure, prompting a personal inquiry to Webb from President Kennedy. Senators and congressmen from sites in Missouri and California similarly lobbied the selection team. Proponents of sites in Boston, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Norfolk, Virginia went so far as to make separate presentations to Webb and the headquarters staff, so Webb added these additional sites to the final review. Okay, I'm not going to get into all of the history, but when you go through here and you read, for example, the Mission Control Center in '61, as plans for Project Gemini began, it became increasingly clear that the Mercury Control Center located at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station Launch Center would become inadequate to control missions with maneuverable spacecraft such as Gemini and Apollo. Christopher Kraft, I made a video about Chris Kraft last week if you want to look it up, and 3 other flight controllers began studying what was needed for the improved control center. You know, my stepdad was in this group of people. He's not named in here. He was lower down on the totem pole, but he was in the movement of all of these people. Go to Wikipedia and read this history on Johnson Space Center. It's very interesting. But think about people as people. When you want to say that everybody in NASA is liars, and like George Carlin said, they're nassholes. They're all lying. They do this on purpose. They are not. 99.99% of them have no idea that what they're doing is a deception. So give them some slack and love these people. We'll pray for them. Maybe in the next life they'll find out what they were doing. But I don't think I'm going to ever be able to convince my stepdad, who moved down here from Hampton, Virginia, with the space program before this was even called Space City, right here where I'm sitting in Space City. So this is a personal story, folks, and I just wanted you to see this. That's him with his head in the oven that he used to test these black shields. Oh, heavy, heavy conversations. I was over there today, and I took these pictures. He went out to work in the garden, and I got out my camera, and I took these without a flash on like 3200 ISO, almost in the dark. Doesn't look like it. But he actually came in the house. I bent over in this stack of VHS tapes and CDs and was going, not that one, not this one, not that one. And he walked in and out. Whew, if he would have come over and said, "What are you doing? Why do you have a camera in your hand? Are you taking pictures of my stuff to put on your YouTube channel?" Anyway, this is Alex Aquarius reporting from the center of the deception. Please hit like, subscribe, come back, ring the bell for notifications. I'm out.